You all know, and this is not a historical sermon, so we're going to assume that you know, the first Pride was a protest. The drag queens kicked off their heels and threw shoes and bricks at the police because they got tired of being raided in our only safe spaces, the havens of bars and taverns that once were only the places we could go. And so what always comes up around this time of year, both in the June Pride and here in Hawaii where we have an October Pride as well, is Pride a party or a protest? And of course the answer is that it is both. I remember my first Pride, which admittedly was a little bit later in my development than I would have liked it to be, but it was for a really interesting reason. I felt so included and welcomed at school and in my home congregation that a kind of outward Pride celebration wasn't really necessary until I moved away. My very first Pride was when I went off to college in Boston, and they actually have a separate youth Pride from the general Pride that happens later in June. So there's a youth Pride that happens about 4 weeks ahead of time in May. It has its own parade, its own events, and it's restricted to people who are teenagers and young adults, mainly 14 to 20-somethings. It was a great experience because there we were in Back Bay, Boston, which was just down the hill from our UUA, our Unitarian Universalist Association headquarters at the time, and hundreds of youth from all over the Commonwealth of Massachusetts just marched through town, uninhibited in their joy, queer as the day is long. They knew they were accepted. They knew they could take up space. I knew as I watched friend after friend after friend, because of course most of the teens were from various UU congregations around the area. There are 45 UU congregations within an hour's ride of Boston. I knew, we knew, that we were accepted. Now, my first Pride as an actual adult was a little bit different. And I won't go into the details of it, but I do remember one particularly dazzling outfit that involved mostly whistles and ties. I knew as an adult that Pride was a time when we could get free, and despite the fact that my mother did not want me to leave the house looking that way, I did it anyway. It was a time when we could show all of who we are. It was a time when we could know that we were finally center stage in our own lives. And so this brings up, what is the meaning of Pride in 2024? Some themes that show up over and over again are fake fights. I'll remind you, fake fights, but a tension between sexual liberation and family friendliness, sometimes the conversation about kink at Pride. The goal of making it an event, Pride, an event that is welcoming of all ages, or a nighttime bacchanal mainly celebrated in the darkness of dance clubs and back alleys. The ongoing conversation about marriage equality or defending all consenting, mutually pleasurable adult relationships and relationship structures. After nearly 20 years, we are still stuck in a marriage equality definition that only allows for people to be male and female. When we have same-sex marriage, our trans siblings, our trans cousins are still left out. And we know that this is true because marriage equality survived judicial review by the Supreme Court, yet states can still legislate whether people have to go to the bathrooms or join sports clubs and teams that confirm or confine them to the sex listed on their birth certificates. We know, and this is not a sermon about the various identities we have as sexual beings. So we know, and so I will assume that you know, that gender identity and sex assigned at birth are not the same thing. And I know, and so I will assume that you know, that the sex assigned at birth that is listed on your birth certificate is not even fully representative of the full biological diversity that actually exists in how we're born and how our genitals appear when someone makes that decision. So I want to talk to you about what I saw last night when we think about some of these tensions among marriage equality and all consenting and mutually pleasurable adult relationships, whether it's an all ages event or a nighttime bacchanal, whether it is about sexual liberation or family friendliness. We did it all, y'all. In a parade that seemed to go on for as long as my heart could hold. Every version of what I understand to be our queer and mahu cultures were there. We had youth there. We had the bars there. I talked about this right before service. In a true tip of the hat to all that is rainbow capitalism, that's the time of the year when all the corporations decide to make everything in the pride colors, from United to Delta, who gave me some Biscoff cookies while I waited to join up with our group. Disney really came through, y'all. They had the Disney logo in the pride colors, in the Disney font, in balloons. In balloons. It was made out of balloons. It was all there. The politicians were there. I saw group after group of liberal politicians. I did not see the queer conservatives. I don't know why. Everyone was there. The puppies were there, both those four-legged creatures and those who wear the leather masks as part of the bondage and dominance community. Everyone was there. Pride here on our beloved islands was big enough to hold everyone. And so that makes me think, Pride now is 55 years old. Pride has grown all the way up, and it means something different to us now than it was when it was younger, when we were all younger. And as Pride comes of age, so too what must we and how we engage with Pride. So I offer this. As Unitarian Universalists, perhaps the way we engage with Pride should be informed by our shared values, specifically those of interdependence, transformation, and equity. Our value of interdependence asks us to honor the interdependent web of all existence with reverence for the great web of life, and with humility that we acknowledge our place in it, that we work to repair harm and damaged relationships, and I think we're doing just that on this beloved chain of islands. We're making space where there didn't used to seem to be enough. We've made a distinction with a no-holds-bar understanding of anyone can march in the parade. I have never lived in any place where there are no barricades along the parade route. Anyone can join the parade at any time. And as you all know, we have a lot of parades, but this was a longer one. However, you still have to pay to be a vendor inside of the festival village, which in and of itself is free to enter. We figured out a way for everyone to participate, but also to hold some limits about what we want to center at the same time as we allow everyone to show up as who they are. Our value of transformation is about adapting to a changing world and having an openness to our Unitarian Universalist heritage, understanding that we, as individuals as well as our communities, are never complete and never perfect. And so too is our approach to Pride. Oh, we learned so much as Marshall and Gabe and others who worked our tent handed out hundreds and hundreds of glow sticks and whistles and glow lanyards and Skittles because they're rainbow. We made several hundred impressions with people who were so deeply seeking our life-saving message. And yes, Unitarian Universalism does save lives. There are people right down the street who don't know that the divine loves them just as they are. There are people right down the street who don't know that their sexuality is healthy and holy, that we are equipped for pleasure. And pleasure is a way that we can know that we're in good and healthy relationships. There are people right down the street who don't know that there is a queer affirming congregation right here, that even some of our more mainstream denominations, the Methodists and the Lutherans, are doing their damnedest to truly live out the message of acceptance and inclusion. And we're doing that work with them. We saved lives last night. We're saving lives today, because we also understand that our value of equity means that we declare that every person has a right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. That we use our time, that we use our wisdom, that we use our attention to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Our communities are designed for the last person we expect would walk in the door, for the last person we expect would roll in the door, for the person that we didn't make the seats strong enough to hold just yet, and so we'll work on that, for the people that we might screw up with time and time again, but who issue their own form of compassion so that we can forgive ourselves and try again. And what is also true as pride matures, as pride is at 55, is that the core of freedom and collective liberation have never changed from what this means, have never changed from what this event has to mean for all of us. Whether we're allies and accomplices, we don't always want people who are right behind us. We want people right in the line of attack, flanking us. We know we're in this together. We understand that pride is big enough to be a multi-generational focal point of community togetherness that can serve the needs of all people without having to be one thing that serves just everyone. And we can also take a lesson from our context here in Hawaii. We understand a mahu understanding of what pride is, a middle way, a middle path that has enough space for everyone, a middle path that reaches out to transform us at our very roots, that calls us to grow from the margins, that calls us to grow the circle ever wider. And as our Time for All Ages story reminded us this morning, words matter. And y'all, it's not about the words. But the words matter because we're trying to avoid hurting one another. But if we only focus on avoiding hurting one another, we're always going to slip up and fail, right? Simply having the goal of avoiding failure doesn't allow us to focus on what we want to build. And it can leave us feeling fearful when what we need to do is risk faithfully. We're gonna mess up no matter what we do. I mess up all the time, and I can tell you there are few more humbling experiences than when I misgender a beloved. But you know what? We apologize. We check in with our beloveds. We do the mental work with other people who share our identities so our beloveds don't have to do that work. And then we try again. And lo and behold, that's it. Achievement unlocked. This is how we get to the beloved community, by making mistakes and trying again and again and again. Not until we're perfect, just until we do better. We show compassion for ourselves and for one another, and we engage in the necessary work of repair and reconciliation. And we try again and again until the glitter and the love flow. You see, pride, it's a protest. It's an act of resistance to a system that hates queer joy. And pride is big enough to be what it needs to be for everyone without being only one experience for all people. And as pride comes of age, and so do we center our UU values and how we do this work. We center our UU values and how we approach all of the diversity that we saw last night. We engage with pride through interdependence, transformation, and equity by adapting to a changing world, continually working to do better at understanding how to repair harm and relationships as we quest for our unapologetic declaration that all people have the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness, to be fully included in communities that anticipate their accessibility needs. Church is for everyone, and for that, we can take pride. And pride is a party because it's one of the most visible signs to all of us that we can, in fact, build the beloved community. We need to take the time to rest, to look around and celebrate and experience the joy that pride brings to us every year, twice a year here. And so we've cleaned up the glitter and the glow sticks. Auntie tucked away the face paints, the temporary tattoos, the wigs, and the false lashes. The crop tops, muscle shirts, and booty shorts are safely stored, at least until next weekend. And the love and compassion of pride flow. It's time to join the parade, y'all. This is how we get free.